Shelly Davis told the fellas to wake up. Boys, wake up. It's LeBron's management team getting him to do this as a deflection from all the accusations of PEDs, HGH.
What?
Watch numerous athletes, past and present, tell you about it. Known amongst insiders.
Oh.
I'm not buying it, Shelly. I'm not
Twitter
buying
handle
it,
with
Shelley.
2 followers. Yeah, Twitter. I'm going to listen to that. Okay.
Come on now. That's
bang on.
Get serious, man.
Yeah,
Like,
we'll wake up, Shelly. Thank you for the info.
We'll try to stay on top of that as much as we can. But
although if it's true, we'll
maybe
send
it
you a
is.
DM.
Exactly. If it's true, then we owe her an apology.
Well, I
it's
mean,
not even
let me just say this. Don't you find it a little bit weird that he teamed up with someone that works at ESPN to do a podcast? It almost seems like, I mean, during the Tiger Woods scandal, there was this thing where it would be like, hey, this company, like, what are those gossip columns? And in one of their umbrellas was a fitness magazine, and they're like, Tiger, we know what you're up to. So all of a sudden he appears on this fitness magazine and did a full spread shoot. And it was like, if you don't do that, then we're going to do this. So it does seem a little fishy.
Yeah, I mean, listen, J.J. Redick, again, is a legit player. Like, it'd be one thing if it was some random, out of nowhere.
I know, dude, but LeBron's been around for, and I'm not saying Shelly
I don't even know
on
yeah, like, let's clarify. We're not accusing anyone of anything here.
No, but he's been around forever, and at 40 years old, or what is he, 39?
Mm-hmm.
He all of a sudden decides in the end of a season he's going to jump on a podcast. That timing's kind of weird.
Yeah, it is weird that you're down the stretch and your team's been up and down all year and they rely on you a lot. It's a weekly podcast. You guys know athletes. You know, they get days off. They get home from practice at 11 a.m. They sit around their house. But he's got a lot in his life. Like, he's got a wife, kids. He's got other businesses. I'm more just kind of in awe. I'm like, why even take something else on? Why even bring on some different endeavor that now...
Dude, when he's done, he's either going to own a team in Vegas or he's going to be sitting right beside Shaq and Chuck.
Yeah, if he wants to do that. Exactly. Yeah. Like, he'll have the pick of the litter. Whatever. You mentioned the Kelsey brothers. LeBron's times infinity in terms of who he is and what he represents. All right, Alex Anthopoulos later in the hour. Something to chew on brought to you by Boston Pizza, Canada's favorite sports bar. From tip-offs to tie bites and puck drops to pizza, BP's elite lineup of apps, wings, and ice-cold beer is always dialed in for game time, also in your local BP tonight. We've been asking people online, when you look at what's going on down at the winter meetings or the GM meetings, which hot-button topic has you most intrigued? The long-term IR loophole, maybe them trying to fix that, suspension lengths, like do they adjust how they approach the player, basically suspension situation, 3-on-3 in overtime, or is there another one? And let's go right to the source and bring in our TSN hockey insider, Chris Johnston. CJ, how would you answer that? What has led to your most intriguing conversations around the water cooler when it comes to what the GMs are actually talking about?
For me, I think the suspensions is going to have a little bit of more zip tomorrow when George Parros, does address the GMs, because it's been a year where that's been a bit of a front burner issue. We've seen a number of longer suspensions. We've had 4 or 5 where the players have appealed them. And I do think that there is some questions, some concerns, some people wondering, has the standard moved? Where's the standard at? And I think it takes a little added urgency or it's more front and center of mind with the playoffs coming, because while it's one thing to have Morgan Riley miss, 4 games in the middle of the season for that cross-check, he delivered. It's quite another, obviously, whether it's a Leafs player or someone else, if you're sitting out playoff games. So I think that it sounds like George Parros is planning to give maybe a more expansive presentation than he typically would at these meetings. And, I would imagine there's going to be some questions for him, because I think that there's a lot of people in a lot of corners, probably including those of us doing this hit, that don't always know, how these decisions are reached as much as they try to communicate them with those videos.
So after that, like what would managers and top end guys in the league, what would they want to do differently if they don't hear what they want to hear? Do you know what I mean, CJ? Like what would happen moving forward if they're not happy with a certain process?
Well, it's tough to say exactly. I have heard, from managers that at times it gets a little bit heated in those meetings. Maybe if someone is challenging, maybe one of the decisions Parros has made. I don't know if that's going to happen here. But ultimately, I mean, look, if you're doing that job, no matter whether it was George Parros, whether years ago it was Colin Campbell, when Brendan Shanahan did it, it's a tough spot. I mean, you're not on too many people's Christmas card list in that role. I think you kind of only get the attention when you're ticking someone off. I don't know what direction will come, if any, from them, but that's probably for me that, barring some kind of surprise, if they unveil a rule change here that we don't see coming or haven't caught wind of yet. That's probably the most intriguing thing, just the discussion that goes on, what Parros himself says, and obviously if we find out if there's any tense moments behind the scenes.
CJ, what is the rumblings around 3-on-3? Like expanded, the time, like instead of 5 minutes, go to 8 or 10, or, what has been the thought process, if anything, about, the 3-on-3 chat?
There's certainly been discussions, Noodles, in the past about making it longer than 5 minutes, and ultimately I think there's concern just about wearing down the top players in the game even more, because obviously it's only players typically at the top of the roster that get those shifts in 3-on-3 overtime. It seems to me, more of what's being kicked around now is ideas around, ways to have it where teams can't kill the clock as much, or, perhaps tweaks, that force it to get into almost like a pinball style game where the chances are going back and forth. I think they've debated things almost like an over and back violation rule, or maybe even having a shot clock, something, basically things that keep the coaches from having some of the success we've seen in slowing things down in overtime and deploying tactics that make it a bit less exciting. I mean, ultimately, I don't get the feeling that they're going to change anything here this week when it comes to 3-on-3 overtime, but it is notable. This is the second straight meeting of GMs where they've had this talk, and that's a reflection of the fact that there are some GMs in the league that are concerned about the direction of overtime, or maybe some of these little things that have crept into the game. And so, I don't know that we're going to get one of those rule changes now, but I do think it's very possible down the road, because I do think there's enough managers that are worried that some of the fun's getting sucked out of the 3-on-3 format.
With Chris Johnston, our TSN Hockey Insider, expansion would not be on the table for the GMs. I mean, that would be the owners that are making that call, and the GMs are going to go with whatever they happen to go with. But I would assume if you bring in all the big hitters in the hockey world and all the big media hitters, that's probably a topic of discussion, if not actually during the meetings, around the bars and the greens and around the pools. Like, do you have a general consensus on how people within the league would feel about going from 32 teams to 34?
I think a lot of people in the league look at it as a chance for more jobs. Whether that's the players, but obviously even there's more GMs, there's more front office types. At the very top of the league, I do think that they're, want to be very mindful before ever jumping into that kind of decision. I mean, let's face it, a lot of the interest seems to be coming from the cities themselves. I mean, this hasn't ever been a case where I've got the sense that Gary Bettman or Bill Daly's out there canvassing cities, what if. It's more the cities are coming to them. In Salt Lake's case, of course, they're bidding for the Olympics down the line here and want to get an arena built. And you've got a young, very wealthy owner who already owns the NBA team who's got an interest. So, I mean, that one makes a lot of sense. Atlanta, big city, you've got Anson Carter with his group, trying to build an arena there. I think that first and foremost, we need to find out what's going on with the Arizona Coyotes. And we don't have to spend much time on that here, but that's probably the most pressing decision, is if Arizona's actually going to get its arena built. Are they going to play there next season and beyond, or are we talking about a relocation, I think, before we get to expansion? But it doesn't feel like if the current market stays as it is and the interest level is where it is, it does feel like it's more a matter of when, not if, when it comes to future expansion teams. I don't think it's on the immediate horizon, but it's not too far off if there's people willing to pay a massive $1 billion plus expansion fee to enter the league. That's a lot of money for the current owners, and they share in it, entirely.
With Chris Johnston, our TSN Hockey Insider, we've been throwing around, for weeks. What is the big story for the Leafs? As we get closer to the playoffs, we're about a month away from it starting up, and putting aside who they're actually going to play, because we may not know until the last day of the season whether it's Boston or Florida, but it seems very likely they're the third seed. They're going to start on the road. Who's going to start in net game one? What are they going to do with the penalty kill? The status of Marner moving forward, load management down the stretch. Do you have one in particular, CJ, that keeps popping up top of mind for you in terms of the Leafs between now and game one?
I'm kind of on the goaltending train myself. I think that Samsonov's obviously been awesome, since he's returned from kind of the mental break he had early in January. The 13-3-0 record kind of speaks for itself there. But, where is he at? We saw him take a shot at the morning skate. I know he played in the game on Saturday where he was down for a little bit. You just wonder, does he stay healthy? Can they get Joseph Woll back to some level where they'd be comfortable playing him? I think, for me, that's probably the biggest individual storyline. I mean, eventually as we get closer and things come into view, it'll shift to, who are they playing in round one and how do they match up against that opponent. But, I think it's, with the Panthers and Bruins so close, I think that's likely to go, right to mid-April. It certainly wouldn't surprise me if that was the case. But it's funny, I actually had a long chat this afternoon with Brad Treliving here, and, he was saying one thing he really likes this year about the team that they faced, that they maybe the past years didn't, is that they came back from the All-Star break and they only had a 5 or 6 point cushion on the playoffs at that point in time. And he said he'd looked the last 5 years, and that was by far the slimmest margin they faced. And, he thinks the fact they've had to play meaningful hockey for the last, month or 6 weeks, and obviously they've strung together a lot of wins in that period, has him feeling encouraged. And, I didn't get any sense from him that there's high-level concern, for example, on the Marner case. I realize that's eating up a lot of the current questions to Sheldon Keefe, but I think that they're going to, they have the ability to be patient there, allow that injury to heal. But, Brad was in a really good mood, and I don't think just because he's hanging out here around the palm trees, I really got the sense he likes the direction things have gone after what we all know was a pretty slow start to the year for this team.
Yeah, they've had a good run. I mean, I think they're 12-3-1 in their last 16 games and top 5 in terms of points percentages the last month and a half in the league, and they've got good stories. Now, the Marner injury is what it is. Yarncroke sounds a little bit different. It's more week to week. I'm sensing that they're just hoping he'll be back for the playoffs, but maybe similar to what Ryan O'Reilly suffered this time last year when he got to town, and eventually he did return for the playoffs. But we'll see what happens with Yarncroke. But there's also other stories within the team, like this Bobby McMann story. It's a really cool, unique story where, 5 weeks ago, this guy was playing for the Marlies. And
didn't they pick him out of the East Coast League?
People, honestly, people didn't know who he was.
Yeah.
Like, if you weren't a diehard, hockey fan, and when he first came up, I guarantee you, like, hockey DB, and it's a great story. I'm happy for him. 2-year extension. We haven't talked about
right.
it since
since we all came back. But no, exactly. I like, again, literally a month and like 3 days ago, the guy was going to be a healthy scratch. An illness runs through the team. He goes in, scores a hat trick. He hasn't come out since. And not only has he not come out since, he got himself a 2-year deal at $1.35 million. And I guess, CJ, the thinking is, he's got some size, plays with some aggressiveness, some physicality. He's got a little bit of a touch around the net, but at a minimum, at that price, the cap keeps going up. If he's on the fourth line at $1.35 million for 2 years, you can live with that. But if he's further up the lineup, then it's going to be a bargain.
Right, and I think there's a world where he develops into a third-line player. Obviously he's not young. He's 27. It's taken him a long road to get to this point where he's in the best league in the world. But, I think because of his ability to finish around the net and his size and all those things, I mean, the toolbox is there, once he gets comfortable and grows into a spot that there's definitely still a little bit of upside to what he can bring. And, one thing Tree mentioned this afternoon actually was, he almost looks at someone like McMann like a trade deadline acquisition. He said it might sound kind of goofy to say, but, he wasn't on the roster at the start of the year. As you mentioned, even into the winter here, there was a scenario where he was going to be scratched from playing for the Leafs, and now he seems to have his hands on a spot. I think they'd like Pontus Holmberg on the fourth line. I mean, they feel that some of the internal growth of those types of players, well, they're never going to be headliners. We're not going to spend lots and lots of minutes talking about them on these hits. I mean, that those are some small areas kind of around the margins where this team might be a little better insulated to go on a playoff run. I mean, obviously they like the fact they have 9 NHL defensemen too. Obviously not the most star-powered group by name, but they certainly have a lot of proven players that can fill those roles. And so, I think that they've tried to do what they can to be more ready for the playoff gauntlet than in years gone by. And they're obviously also banking on the fact that all the main guys on the team are a year older and have a little bit more experience than they did the last time they went through this in the spring.
What I like about the McMann deal, CJ, it just seems like it's right for both sides. The organization is recognizing where we're saying, hey, you're an NHL player, and we're going to let you do that here. And he could have easily sat, because I guarantee you somebody might have gave him more in the summer, and he didn't want to take that chance because I think he understood the great opportunity playing in Toronto, and maybe if he goes to Columbus or somewhere like that, he's just not Bobby McMatthews there, and he just becomes a guy. So I think it's just a great deal for both sides. It's just a good understanding of where everyone was at, and it's just a good, fair deal.
I thought, why 1.35? Like I was like, why not 2 years at $1 million a year? Like I'm sure he would have taken that too. Like I'm glad he got more, but I never understood the money. Like I think maybe Tree tried to find him a few extra couple hundred, but $350,000 against your cap is a lot.
Yeah,
it
every
counts,
dollar
right?
can count.
Like I that
Ludos,
was my
when
first
four
thing.
other guys are making a zillion, I'm not worried about that. Trust me.
Well,
not
you're
even
right.
close. Not even on my radar.
And say this, McMann had some leverage here. I mean, he would have been a UFA, and I know he's not a proven commodity, but he's got 10 goals this year in pretty limited minutes. And, there was an opportunity maybe for him, if he has a strong finish of the year, to go out and make more than that as a free agent. So I think that's where the happy medium comes in negotiations. And the truth is, if it doesn't work out, and if next year things don't go as well, he doesn't make the team out of camp for whatever reason, if other players pass him, whatever it is, they can bury most of that in the American Hockey League. So it's not really a risky deal, I don't think, from the Leafs end of things. And obviously for Bobby McMann, that's more security than he probably ever dreamed he'd have, when he was playing in Newfoundland 2 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, I guess with the cap going up, the floor goes up too, right, in terms of what you can bury in the minors. And, that might be a part of it as well. But you're right. Yeah. I mean, Noodles, I hear what you're saying too, because literally a month ago, the guy was a Marley.
Well, if you said to him a month ago, we'll give you a 2-year extension at $1 million a year.
Yeah, like he'd jump on it.
You know the deal, though, Noodles. It's all timing. It's all
I agree, and I'm happy for the kid. He's a Wainwright, Alberta kid. Like he's played well. I said this to you guys the other day. Reminds me a little bit of Mason Marchment. A little, longer body, can
Took
play
him a
physical,
while.
Got some hand. Yeah, a little later bloomer. Like I love the kid. And I'm happy for him. I thought the number was a bit weird for me.
Yeah, I mean, it's
why.
the same they gave to Reeves, I believe. Like, I think Reeves got the 3 years at 1.35. They like that number. But, I mean, listen, if he has a great playoff, if they go 2-3 rounds and he puts his name on the map that much more, and I think he's got the potential to be a real playoff performer. Not going to play a ton of minutes and not going to be on the power play or anything like that, but those are the guys.
He's a big, strong dude, man, that can go to the net and change momentum.
Exactly.
He could be a valuable player.
Yep, exactly.
And a homegrown guy. I think there's benefit to that, right? I mean, I think that he's a success story for the organization, signed as a free agent and right up through 3 ranks with the team. So I think that you want to reward those players, too, when they've earned it.
Yep, that's a good point. All right, CJ, enjoy yourself down there. We'll do it again, if not later in the week, early next week. Thank you for this.
All right. See you, boys.
Chris Johnston, our TSN Hockey Insider. Best Bets brought to you by FanDuel later in the hour. Alex Anthopoulos coming up. We'll ask him about, what's going on with the Braves. How's he feeling about his team going into a new season? What does he make of Shohei Ohtani now in the National League? Were they in on Ohtani? And what does he make of Votto? I mean, he's a Canadian guy. He's well aware of what Joey Votto represents. And what does he think of Votto trying to keep his career going in camp with the Blue Jays? So we'll catch up with Alex, and we'll get to our Best Bets later in the hour. OverDrive continues, TSN 1050 and on TSN 2. All right, Alex Anthopoulos coming up here in just a few moments. Best Bets are back and better than ever, powered by FanDuel. Make your picks and assemble a same-game parlay in seconds on the FanDuel Sportsbook app. Only a couple of games in the NHL tonight. I'm under the number, Caps Flames. Dustin Wolf Noodles, your boy, has been unreal.
Been great.
Been great, and he's going again tonight. I think it'll be a lower scoring game, and I'm going to ride the Sabres money line, man. Sabres have been coming alive. Like they're in the hunt. I don't think they're going to make
all the
it.
Teams you owe an apology are coming alive.
No, that's not true, because at the start of the year we had this debate, And remember, I used
you don't
the
think
word,
he's ripped the Sabres at one point?
he has.
Of course.
But no, Detroit and Ottawa and Buffalo, and one other team in there. I can't remember. Montreal. But I said there are teams. There are going to be teams in this division that'll play meaningful games.
Yep.
Buffalo and Detroit are playing meaningful games.
Yeah, they are.
Montreal and Ottawa not.
Yep.
And that's where I thought the gap would bridge a little bit. Two of them have.
There's nothing worse than Noodles. I'm
You're
sure
right.
you've done it a few times. There's nothing worse than like being in the fight right till the end, and just like the last two games you lose and you're out, and you're like,
yeah, you're done.
Okay, that's it for that year. See you guys.
Yeah.
Well,
It's just like it's such a mental grind in a battle every night. You're like, we're in it, and then it's like you just lose that one, and it's like, see you guys. It's
no one cares about what people in Buffalo think.
Buffalo, quick Buffalo. I like it. You could edit every city, basically.
Everyone,
in the US.
man. Yeah. Everyone.
Yeah. And a few sprinkled across Canada, too. But those are your best bets. Powered by FanDuel. FanDuel's goal in the first 10 minutes is the most electric bet in hockey and can be included in a same-game parlay on any NHL game. Please play responsibly, 19+ and physically located in Ontario. Alex Anthopoulos coming up here in a few moments. Saw Scotty Scheffler posting pics, and everyone's jacked about what's going on with Scotty at the Players. And it was a great tournament. We talked about it earlier. PGA Tour needed that. You know, there's your boy Brian Harmon right in it until the end, and Wyndham Clark. Man,
dude, how about that putt that Wyndham? That looked like a candid camera moment where someone was under the cup and threw it out. That was crazy.
I can't believe that didn't go in. I cannot believe that did not go in. He couldn't either. He double pumped before it went in.
If you look at the slow-mo, that's like halfway down the cup.
Yeah.
Like it's not your standard lip out. It goes halfway in and then comes back out.
Yeah. It's scary, man, because obviously he hit it a little bit too
that.
hard.
Like that's halfway down there.
That's so tough to do. Like that is tough to replicate. And I mean, he birdied 16, he birdied 17, and then that would have been just an unbelievable finish. Like as good as the Sunday was, and it was amazing. The whole week was great. It would have been that much greater if Clark pushed it over the top. And I saw someone tweeting out that that's back-to-back weeks. Scheffler won when the Players and the Arnie Palmer, and Wyndham Clark was second in both tournaments. Like when does that ever happen in PGA Tour history? Back-to-back weeks. Guy wins a tournament, and the other guy's right behind him.
Yeah, they're both dialed in. That's Scotty Scheffler, though. I think Duthie tweeted about it where he's like, I'm done kind of being in the middle whether I should. I'm all in on Scheffler. He's just that good.
Yeah.
Yes, he's kind of vanilla, and he doesn't say a whole lot. But I'll tell you what, man. Nobody hits it better. The guy hits it like a god, man.
Well, and being accused of being vanilla and not saying anything, what did Tiger ever do or say?
No
Tiger
kidding.
was the most
Besides,
vanilla athlete ever.
Yeah, he was a monster on the course where he would stare a guy down and fist pump.
Right.
But he would say squat afterwards.
Nothing. Just smile and be like, well, you know how it is. See you later.
And then we found out what he was really like after.
True. Like over time, we found out Tiger, there was something
he had some
there.
personality.
He was a lot. Yeah,
he had some personality. And you're right about his approach on the course. He was an assassin on the course. I mean, he was at fist pumping and played with incredible personality. Where Scotty
Scheffler said yesterday to Brando Chambly in the post game interviews, he was like, I don't read anything about anything, positive, negative things. I don't have social media. I don't know what anyone writes. He's like, I have this secret thing on my Google search where it's like, not for me. And it was just like, okay, what the hell are you? What do you do with yourself?
Just a robot, man. Like, and that's what he is, right? Like Full Swing. They had that episode where Koepka was like, look at this kid Scheffler. He's got no cares in the world. He just goes out and plays golf and
dials it in. Before the end of the show, like you saw that lip out there. I'm gonna get you guys, Joe from the Bridge. You got to find it. There's an old school tour pro that is at qualifying school. And he needs to make this 5-footer. It goes in the hole and
pops. I know what it is. I've seen it.
It's the
sickening.
most insane thing. It goes in. He makes the putt, and then there's like it's like a candid camera thing. It just comes out of the golf hole.
Yeah, it hits the center of.
And he starts yelling. He's like, "That was in."
But is it because he shot it too hard? Like,
No.
what causes that?
It's just
noodles.
physics, man.
It was
like,
the most normal thing. It goes in the hole, and I think he was like, I made it. And then all of a sudden, this thing comes out.
Shoot straight up.
You got to see it. It hits
At the end of
middle
the show,
cup.
I'm going to show this. It's the most insane thing on a golf course. In his expression, he loses his mind.
Yeah. Well,
So
that's
Joe
Q
from the
school,
Bridge.
man.
Try to find that.
I know exactly what you're talking about. We'll find it. It's all over YouTube. Joe from the Bridge, you'll find it, Doogie, because it is sickening. Like, he needed that putt to qualify.
Yeah.
He gets a PGA Tour card. Like, he's on the tour with
Dude,
that
it's
putt.
the most heartbreaking golf thing you will ever see in your life.
It is sickening. And I felt for Schauffele because that's Xander in a nutshell. Like, he's in it. He's got uber talent. He can't close. He can't close.
You
at big
watch him in the
tournaments.
middle of the tournament, and you're like, how does this guy not win more?
Right.
Like, just dude, that guy's 5'10", 175, and he
crushes golf
rips
balls.
it, man.
Yeah,
he
crushes
rips
golf
it,
balls.
dude.
Yeah, he's sick. Like, he's a great player, but he just doesn't close. Him and Cantley, it's the same thing. You get them to a major or whatever, and they just don't get over the top.
Yeah.
All right, Alex Anthopoulos coming up here in just a moment, and like, baseball's back. I mean, it's the opener, I believe, is next Wednesday. It starts in Seoul,
Series?
Korea.
Yeah.
That's regular season play.
Yeah. The Dodgers, like, Ohtani's making his debut in South Korea, which is pretty wild. I mean,
Yeah, it will be.
yeah, they're sending the big boy. They do that, I believe, every year now. They've gone to Japan. They've gone to, obviously, Korea. I think they did Australia either last year or the year before that. And, yeah, those teams got to be over there for a while, and they play. They come back, then they get a break. It's kind of a weird, like, abbreviated start. But the Dodgers, they're the team that you want to see. And, you can only imagine, like, obviously we've talked a lot about Ohtani and what he means in the U.S., Canada, Japan, but he'd be massive all over Asia. Like, he's massive all around the world because of who he is. But, yeah, we're what are we, 10 days out? And it's go time, man. Teams will be breaking camp, and like we said, baseball's back. And here's the president of baseball operations and the GM of the Atlanta Braves. Been on the show many times before. We always love having him on. Here's Alex Anthopoulos. How you doing, Alex?
Doing great, guys. Glad to be on.
Yeah, thank you for doing this. I mean, we're always curious about your schedule as you get closer to the end of camp. I mean, I'm assuming you come into it, you understand a lot of these guys are going to make the team. You got a great team, tons of talent. But do the nerves start to pick up a little bit for you as you get closer to, the real thing, and also maybe having to make some tough decisions and tell some players that, they're either going down or they're not making the team? Like, how does your mood change as spring training goes on?
Yeah, I'd say I don't, because it's been so many seasons, whether it's in scouting or when I started and assistant GM, and knowing how long the season is, and there's going to be so many twists and turns, I don't really focus on that. Really, I would say the focus is cutting down the roster, which we basically got it done today. And like you said, having those conversations with people, look, I remember when I interviewed for the Braves job, and I really enjoyed my interview in terms of, like, I came away saying, I really want that job. The people I met with were incredible. Opportunity seemed great. I had to wait 2 weeks, and I was climbing the walls waiting. It was just tough to, spend time on anything else. We're in the World Series with the Dodgers. So I know that with our players, like you said, we're a week out. We were down about 34 guys in camp. We're going to break with 26. And all these guys, we have an off day tomorrow. It's only normal, right? They're a week out. Am I going to make it? Am I not going to make it? Do I have to look for apartments in Atlanta? Do I have to figure out what I'm doing with my family? Do I have to get my car shipped? So I'm a big believer in trying to tell guys as soon as you can to not put them through all that stuff. And candidly, because we had an off day tomorrow, we pushed to get it done today. Because I could only imagine these guys would be climbing the walls tomorrow on an off day, wanting to know. So we basically made our last cuts. We're down to 26. And I like the fact that we come back now after the off day. We got a week left. We got our guys together. They're going to play. They're going to hopefully gel. I mean, a lot of these guys have already been with the team. But I like the fact that the last week of spring we're going to be together, small unit, a group, gel. I know our manager's going to play our guys a lot. And I think the guys that weren't going to make it, the sooner they know, the sooner they can get going.
Alex, we just talked about the Dodgers before we brought you on, and I know it's kind of faux pas to ask a rival GM about another team, but as a baseball fan, just watching their offseason, it was fairly fascinating. How did you view it from being in a rival GM position?
Yeah, you know what? I get asked that all the time, right? The Phillies have made some big moves in the past. They're in our division. The Mets the same way. Don't get me wrong. I don't want any teams internationally getting better or getting great players, but I would much rather be. And I know we're not an underdog, or I know we're still viewed as a good team, but I don't mind it when these other teams have greater expectations, the limelight, the spotlight. And I understand, everyone views this as a good team and so on, but when you sign arguably one of the best players that's ever played the game in Ohtani, and you make great trades and all that stuff, and look, the focus is going to be on LA Dodgers, and it should be. It's probably good for the game in terms of their brand internationally and so on, but I rather the focus and attention be on somebody else. I definitely don't like it being on us. I'd rather just kind of try to be below the radar, do our thing. And look, we've seen it year in and year out. You can have the MVP, you can have the Cy Young winner, you can have the best player in baseball. It doesn't guarantee anything when you get in the playoffs. So, and look, guys are going to have bad seasons. Guys are going to get hurt. We don't know who yet. I don't ever get caught up in it. To me, the best example was, I remember when I was with the Jays and the Red Sox signed for Carl Crawford and traded for Adrian Gonzalez, and we were at the winter meetings. And I think the mood was, we're dead. Like, all of us. Everybody in the AL East, it's over. And you wouldn't come out and say it at the time, but that's how everybody felt. And look, they were incredible for 5 months, and then the last month, it didn't work out, and things changed. So there's just too many examples of you need to play out the year.
When a guy like Ohtani comes up, is it like mandatory you have the conversation with your owner? Like, I don't know how much you can reveal, but what was your Ohtani approach this winter?
Yeah, I think like anything else, you have an idea who all the free agents are. You're doing the work. And look, I think the biggest thing that you have to assess is what is the likelihood, especially a guy that's going to be, is arguably the best player in the game. He will be highly sought after, coveted, and so on. So you know who you're competing with and what are the chances, because at that point, it's going to be about where the player wants to play, right? He's going to do well financially. And I just think you have to assess what are the chances he's going to come to your club. And like when we signed Martin in Toronto, right? We had heard, a lot of rumors about the Dodgers and the Cubs and these big market teams that were going to be in on him, right? And at the time, we weren't spending to the level of those two teams. But we decided, hey, all things being equal, we should be able to sign this guy. I actually told him that because he was Canadian. He was from here, and his dad comes see him play. I even told him that. I said, if we can't sign you, something's wrong. I get it if you're from California or you're from some other place. But I think my first meeting with him, we got a suite at the Canadiens game, and I walked in. I met him for the first time. It was the first day we were allowed to do all that. And I told him right on the spot, I said, just so you know, I'm signing you. Like, you will be a Blue Jay. And he laughed. And I'm like, no, I don't think you realize, like, we are signing you. Like, there is no, like, this isn't a joke. And then we talked and got into it, but, like, we were determined, and there was no scenario that we were going to get beat for him. And we knew that we were a desirable place for him. But there's times that for geographic reasons or other reasons, you just know that the likelihood of a player coming to your team is remote. So that's where you have to assess and say, look, realistically, he's probably not going to want to come here for whatever the reason might be. And candidly, we might not spend as much time. And I think that just comes with experience. It's knowing where to spend your time. You do the same thing in trade. Who's realistic? Who isn't?
With Alex Anthopoulos. Yeah, well, exactly. I mean, you've been doing this a long time. It still feels like, the assistant GM days, right. Alex Anthopoulos, like, this young guy that came out of nowhere. But obviously, as you stated, I mean, you've been around the game now for a long time, in Toronto, in LA, now in Atlanta, winning World Series. And every time you come on with us, you speak about that. You speak about, that type of kind of history you have and the knowledge that you've accumulated. And, you talk about guys like Ohtani, and then there's other guys like Russell Martin, and there's a situation up here in Toronto that you're aware of with Joey Votto, where Joey's trying to keep his career going, and we have a great appreciation for that because he's 40, he's done it all, outside of winning that World Series, but he's in camp and he's grinding. And I'm curious how it works in terms of sending scouts out to see players, with other teams. Like you said, you cut your roster down. You've got your guys. You know who you've got. But spring training can be about accumulating info on other players and other teams. How often do you have to have chats with your scouts about that? Like what's going on, on the East Coast, the West Coast, whatever? And would a guy like Votto ever pop up in those conversations?
Yeah, I mean, so one, I never met Joey Votto, but from afar, admire him. He's such a thoughtful player. Like his interviews are incredible. Obviously, a Hall of Famer with his career. Scott Rowland, who I'm still friends with to this day, and we text from time to time and so on. Always raved about him. Even though he's Toronto a short period of time, he raved about Joey and so on. So I think it's awesome for him. It's awesome for the organization that he's got a chance to get up to the majors with them. But look, in terms of following what's going on, we're like everybody else, right? We're reading things. Yeah, you have scouts. You have information and data from all these ballparks now. All these ballparks are outfitted with all the data, and every club is getting that stuff. A lot of games are on TV now. You're able to watch guys as well. So you have access to so much information. And look, you're combing through media reports, interviews. You're watching what's being said. You're looking for any clues and crumbs you can get. And you're trying to piece the thing together. So, but yeah, I mean, look, it's the same thing. It's just like, realistically, is this guy really going to be available? Is this club going to move this guy? I can tell you again, as a young GM, just without experience, I chased everybody. I wasted a lot of time. And I look back now and I'm like, I should have known, right? Certain guys, I'm trying to talk them into coming over as free agents, and for whatever reason, they weren't coming, no matter what we offered them. But, you're young and inexperienced, and I think as you get wiser, and it doesn't mean that you don't try, so I don't want to make it like it's a glass half empty approach. I just think I think your instincts are a little better on what's real, what isn't, and you manage your time a lot better, and that translates to the trade deadline. You have a certain amount of time. You have to really be decisive, because as a young GM, you can get used and go down the path of trying to sign guys you have no shot of signing, go down the path of trying to trade for guys that you have no shot of trading for. But a big part of it is gathering information, like you talk about with scouts, media reports, all of it. Whatever you can get, you're putting it all together.
Alex, when it comes to Votto or a player like that, and I'm sure you've experienced this in the past, what's the kind of thought process from your end, or maybe the concern of bringing a star player for a long period of time and then all of a sudden it's just a role type player? Like, what's the danger in that? Is it attitude or how you're going to fit in?
I mean, again, I can't speak to him, obviously, because I don't know the parameters of what their discussion was and so on, but just from afar, again, and reading his quotes, I mean, there's a level of humility there that, hey, I'm going to make the team. I'm trying to make the team. So I think like anything, right, you just want to be transparent with any player, and everyone knows where they stand. So I think as long as everyone knows where they stand, you don't really have issues. There's times people might not agree with the decision, but, we had sent some guys down and so on, and they probably feel like I should have made the team and whatnot. And I'll tell guys, hey, this might be a mistake, but we try to make a decision where it could be reversed. So we start opening day with these 26. If 10 days into it or 2 weeks into it, we realize we picked the wrong guys and the guy we sent to the minors is doing better, we can reverse the decision. It's not a permanent choice. So definitely, I think, showing humility to the players that, look, we're making a call. We know we're not going to bat 1,000. Here's why we're doing it. Don't expect you to agree with it, but at least we're explaining to you why. And if we're wrong, we'll make a move, and you're going to be back. And I think, again, not that guys are going to be elated with not making the team. My experience has been, as long as you shoot them straight, they can put their head on the pillow at night.
With Alex Anthopoulos. So as we get closer, obviously, you mentioned today you guys cut your team down. You got your 26. Everyone's feeling good. You guys have been a perennial contender in the NL East and the National League. You won a World Series a couple of years ago. How you feeling about your group this year and what kind of damage you guys can do?
You know what? It's interesting. Like, I worry every year. The one year I didn't worry, I told one of our executives in the middle of spring training, I think it was going into 2021, which was the year we won the World Series, but our first half was a miserable first half. And I remember saying, wow, I feel really good about the team. I'm not worried. And I was like, this is odd. It's the first time I'm not worried. So, look, I think the biggest thing is everyone's going to come out of spring and say, we're so excited, and this is great, and everyone's great. But the reality is there's going to be a bunch of guys that have bad years, a bunch of guys that get hurt. Now you'll have some great stories as well. And getting through 6 months is so much different than being in the playoffs and trying to win in that moment. So I think the focus, you're constantly thinking about, okay, what if a starter goes down? Who's next? What if an infielder goes down? Who's next? What if an outfielder goes down? Who's next? And I know it sounds kind of, it is glass half empty, but you constantly have to stay ahead of it. You got to stay on your toes, knowing that you're going to need a lot of players to get through a season. And especially at the end of camp, a lot of guys that are opting out of contracts, a lot of guys that are out of options, that are getting DFA'd and available. I mean, you have real opportunities to get some players that could really impact you. So, look, I know we have a talented team. We have a really good group. I respect every team in the division a ton. But I know I see the projections and all this stuff on win totals. And I always ask our guys, R&D guys that do projections, I'm like, they always feel high. I always feel like, and because I'm so close to it with our roster, and I spend time worrying about the warts and the issues we have. But I know we have a good team. I know we've got the chance to make the playoffs. But we don't take our foot off the gas in terms of worrying about being insulated and making sure we have enough players to get through when things don't go well.
Alex, I know last year grown-ass men talked you into buying them an ice cream machine, and that would be beneficial to them, and you bought into it, and you did it. Has there been anything else brought to your attention as far as their needs and wants?
Yeah, so it was, that was that was 2022. They asked, we were facing Jacob deGrom, Max Scherzer, and 2 other really good Mets starters in 22. They had like a 10-game lead in the division. We had a 4-game series. And I'm thinking, one, you don't want an ice cream machine in your clubhouse. Guys will be killing it each day. And just not a good thing, right? But we're in the month of August. At this point, it's like we're trying to win the division. We needed, to have a good series. And I figured there's, beating deGrom, Scherzer, and the next 2 were going to be tough. So I'm like, all right, boys, you guys want the ice cream machine? You got to win 3 out of 4. And I'm thinking, all right, I'm in pretty good shape. Got deGrom and Scherzer; those are 2 Cy Young candidates. If we split, it's solid. And the guys came through, won 3 out of 4, and we won the last game. And Kenley Jansen, who was the closer at the time, he was pulling down on the soft serve handle as they were going to shake hands in the line, because it kind of brought everybody together, and that's the kind of stuff that they want to do. But we encourage guys to go out to dinner together, go to a sporting event. If they're doing trips and they have stuff planned, we'll get them a bus. We'll do stuff. I love it when guys want to hang out. We can't force them to do that, but if they choose to do that and we can help with the facilitation of it and get it going, I think it's, we had a saying with some of our guys that they're like, good teams hang out together. And I think there's something to that.
Well, I think we'd all echo that as well. And a little soft serve. I love that idea, man. How do you get it out, though, Alex?
Studio. Get it.
We need one in the studio.
Give us yours if you don't want it anymore, Alex.
Yeah.
Here's the deal. So Chick-fil-A in Atlanta, which there's one on the Eaton Center, right?
Yeah, there is.
It's the equivalent of basically Tim Hortons. So I don't know if Tim Hortons is a sponsor or not, but I guess I'm going to throw them a plug.
Yeah.
Not that they need it in Canada, but so Chick-fil-A is king. The lines are through the roof everywhere in Atlanta, every corner. So they basically got wind of this thing, and they gave us this souped up Ferrari Deluxe, 2-headed monster, the whole it was crazy, and they were thrilled to do it, right? So we got a ridiculous ice cream machine that these guys just provided for us. It was really awesome.
Awesome. All right. Well, good luck the rest of the spring here into this new season. We always appreciate you doing this, and I'm sure we'll catch up again down the road. Thank you, Alex.
All right, guys. Always enjoy it.
There's Alex Anthopoulos of the Atlanta Braves.
Imagine telling another grown man that runs the team, Can you get an ice cream machine?
Yeah, soft serve. We need soft serve. Like, because Jansen would have been doing like the soft serve, like, because there's different types. You can do the spin.
I'm just trying to think of the look on Jimmy Rutherford's face if one of us went up to him and said, I think we need an ice cream, especially me if I asked that. He would have absolutely went berserk.
He would have traded you immediately.
Yeah.
Like that. Thing
Can
is,
we
though,
get an ice cream machine in the locker room?
The amount of guys, think of the money that these guys make.
Right. They could buy one on their own if they want one.
But they have in their basement.
Yeah, they could have an ice cream truck in the parking lot. They would do it.
They could.
It's crazy.
They could. You're right. All right, we'll come back and wrap up a busy afternoon. Overdrive continues. TSN 1050 and on the TSN app. All right, Overdrive continues. Brought to you by FanDuel, bringing you everything from the opening line to the final score. Only 2 games in the NHL tonight. Some NBA games. Those Raptors, man. Oh, is it awful.
Lean. It's lean, right?
7 in a row. They lost to Detroit, like bad. They were dogs against Detroit, and they didn't cover. They didn't cover the number against Detroit.
Yeah.
And, Scotty's out, Pirtle's out, RJ didn't play last night. That lineup they played last night, that's legitimately one of the worst lineups you'll see in team history. I'm not trying to be crazy or outlandish. It just that's what you're getting. Like, they're not a great team anyway, and a few of their best players are out. It's tough.
The only thing that was interesting is the post game, and I'm not going to.
Yeah, we won't get into that.
Sure, yeah. No,
Someone, I'll bet you, had a chat after the game and said, boys, what are we doing here? Let's figure this out. Yeah. Anyway, good to be back. Thanks to everyone behind the scenes for helping out, as always. We appreciate it. Everyone for tuning in today. TV, radio, podcast, web, we appreciate that. We're out of here. Enjoy your evenings. Enjoy the games tonight. We're back tomorrow at...
Good to be back, boys. 4 p.m.
We'll chat then.